Tales of Veldrith. Book 3. The Quest of the Seeress, created by Matty Taylor. Short story, The Serpent of Lake Vetter's Yaw. The sun hung low over Jorvik, casting a cold silver light over the settlement and the surrounding snow-dappled woods. Winter had begun its slow retreat, but the air still held a sharp bite, and Lake Vetter's Yaw, a sprawling expanse of icy water that mirrored the sky, remained a place of quiet peril. The townsfolk had long respected the lake's temperament, treating it as both a provider and a threat. But now they feared it more than ever. Ira Thorsdottir stood on the rocky shore, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword, her breath plumed in the frosty air as she stared across the frozen water. The rumours had spread quickly. Something beneath the lake had awakened, something vast and angry. 3 fishermen had disappeared in the last 2 weeks, their empty boats found drifting near the shore, torn nets trailing like spider silk. The Jarl's council had pleaded for help, and Ira had answered the call. She had dealt with wolves, raiders, and even Skraeling warriors who mistrusted Jorvik's presence in Vinland. But a creature from the depths, that was a new kind of challenge. Behind her, the voices of the gathered villagers murmured with worry. Ira turned and raised her hand.
"Go back to your homes,"
she said, her voice cutting through the chill like a blade.
"Fear won't help me do what I've been hired to do."
The crowd hesitated before dispersing reluctantly, their faces etched with fear and doubt. Only one remained, a young boy with a shock of blonde hair and wide, curious eyes. He held a wooden fishing spear in his small hands.
"You shouldn't be here,"
Ira said, arching an eyebrow. The boy stepped forward defiantly.
"You can't fight the lake alone?"
"I've fought worse."
Ira replied. Her voice was kind but firm.
"What's your name?"
"Sven,"
he said.
"My uncle was taken by it."
"I'm sorry."
Ira said, her tone softening. She knelt so she was at eye level with him.
"But I need you to trust me. This isn't a battle for little warriors."
Sven's face fell, but he nodded reluctantly. He handed her the fishing spear.
"Take it then. It's lucky. My uncle made it."
Ira accepted the spear with a small smile.
"Thank you. Now get home."
Sven lingered for a moment before turning and running back up the path toward the village. Ira stood, gripping the spear thoughtfully. It was a simple weapon, but there was something earnest in the boy's belief. She slid the spear into the leather straps on her back and turned toward the lake once more. The frozen lake stretched wide and still, its surface cracked in places where the ice had begun to melt. Ira knew that beneath that fragile crust lurked a world of shadows and teeth. She unslung her bow and nocked an arrow tipped with iron. A fishing boat waited nearby, tethered to a rock, the only vessel brave enough to still drift near the icy shore. She stepped into the boat and pushed off with her foot, the oar slicing the water as she moved into the center of the lake. The silence was almost reverent, broken only by the sound of the water lapping against the hull. Ira's pulse was steady, but her thoughts drifted. Vestinus should have been here. He had disappeared after the events at the glade, swallowed by some unseen purpose. Ira had long since given up hoping for news of his return. But there were moments, like now, when she felt his absence keenly. He had always been attuned to the strange, to the unnatural pulses of the ley lines. He would have sensed this monster before it surfaced. A sudden crack beneath her pulled her from her thoughts. She froze, her eyes scanning the water's surface. A deep, sonorous groan rippled through the lake, as if the water itself had spoken. Ira gripped her bow tightly. The ice shattered with an explosive force, sending shards flying into the air. Ira barely had time to react before the boat lurched violently, nearly capsizing. A massive, serpentine shape burst from the depths, a creature of glistening scales as black as night, its eyes like burning embers. Water streamed from its coiled body as it towered above her, its maw lined with dagger-sharp teeth.
You're Mongonda's spawn.
Ira muttered under her breath, raising her bow. The serpent roared, a sound that rattled her bones. She loosed her arrow, and it struck true, embedding itself in the creature's thick hide. The serpent thrashed in pain, sending waves crashing against the boat. Ira's knuckles whitened as she struggled to keep her balance. The creature lunged, its jaws snapping shut inches from where Ira had been standing. She dove to the side, her boots skidding across the wet deck as the serpent's head slammed into the boat, splitting the wood with a resounding crack. The boat began to sink, cold water rushing over her feet. Ira cursed and slung her bow over her shoulder, drawing her sword. The serpent circled her, its long body churning the water into a frothing maelstrom. Its head reared again, its burning eyes fixed on her. Ira didn't wait for it to strike. She lunged, driving her sword into the side of its neck. The blade bit deep, and the serpent recoiled with a deafening hiss, blood streaming into the lake. But the creature's strength was immense, and its tail lashed out, striking Ira hard across the chest. She was thrown from the boat, her body hitting the icy water with a bone-jarring impact. The cold stole the breath from her lungs as she sank beneath the surface. The weight of her armor dragged her down, but she kicked furiously, her instincts forcing her upward. She broke through the water's surface, gasping for air as she swam toward a floating piece of the wrecked boat. The serpent was circling again, its blood clouding the water. Ira grabbed the fishing spear Sven had given her, its simple point glinting in the pale light. She clung to the wreckage, her breath ragged as the serpent reared for another strike.
Come on, then.
She snarled, raising the spear. The serpent lunged, its jaws wide. Ira thrust the spear upward, driving it into the roof of the creature's mouth. The force of the impact shot pain through her arm, but the spear held. The serpent thrashed wildly, the spear buried deep in its skull. Its death throes churned the water around her, dragging her down again as its massive body writhed and coiled. Ira clung to the spear with all her strength, her vision swimming as the cold gnawed at her limbs. Slowly the serpent's movement slowed, its body sinking beneath the surface until the lake grew still once more. Ira dragged herself onto the shore, collapsing onto the cold, wet stones. She lay there for a moment, her chest heaving as she fought to catch her breath. The serpent's body lay half submerged in the lake, a dark silhouette against the breaking dawn. Footsteps approached, and she forced herself to sit up as villagers rushed toward her, their faces a mix of awe and relief. Sven was at the front of the crowd, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of the fallen beast.
You did it,
he whispered. Ira managed a tired smile. She held out the broken fishing spear, its point splintered, but still embedded with the serpent's blood.
Your spear was lucky after all.
Sven beamed as the crowd began to cheer, though Ira's gaze drifted past them, toward the forest's edge. For a brief moment she thought she saw a familiar shape, a tall crimson figure watching from the shadows. She blinked, and it was gone. The cheers rose around her, but Ira's thoughts lingered on the empty space where Vestinus had once stood.
Soon,
she murmured, her voice lost beneath the sound of the waves.
You'll come back soon.
Book 3, The Quest of the Seeress. Chapter 1, The Missing Fallen. The morning frost clung stubbornly to the rooftops of Jorvik, glinting beneath the pale sun. Smoke curled from chimneys, mixing with the scent of roasting fish and wood smoke as the village began to stir. But despite the hum of activity, the settlement felt subdued, muted, as though a shadow hung over its people. Ira Thorsdottir adjusted her cloak against the chill and strode through the market square, her boots crunching in the thin layer of ice that clung to the ground. The familiar weight of her sword on her hip was more of a comfort than usual. Her presence drew respectful nods and wary glances from the townsfolk. Whispers followed her, a mix of admiration and unease. They know why I'm leaving, she thought. Her reputation as a warrior who had stood alongside Vestinus, who had fought to save Jorvik from the shadow of the heralds of Arawn, preceded her. But Vestinus's disappearance after the battle had left a wound in the village and in Ira that had yet to heal. She stopped at the edge of the lake, the icy surface reflecting the cold, clear sky. For months, she had waited, hoped, but no word had come. No sign of the crimson-skinned Caducci who had become her closest ally. Her breath hung in the air as she muttered,
"Where are you?"
A soft sound drew her attention, a pair of footsteps crunching over the frost. She turned to see Skjorn, the village's blacksmith, approach, his face set with concern. The burly man carried a pack in one hand and a small leather-bound journal in the other.
"You're really going then?"
Skjorn asked, his voice rough but kind. Ira nodded.
"I have to. I can't sit idle any longer. There's someone out there who knows something. I can feel it."
Skjorn handed her the pack.
"Dried meat, a flask of mead, and some salve for wounds. You'll need it where you're headed."
He paused, scratching his beard.
"The north is wild, Ira. The Seeress doesn't speak to many, and she's not known for kindness."
"I don't need kindness.
Ira said, her tone firm.
Just the truth."
Skjorn hesitated, then handed her the journal.
"Take this too. It was my grandfather's. He traveled that way once, charted the paths. If anyone can find her, it's you."
Ira accepted the journal with a nod of gratitude.
"Thank you, Skjorn."
The blacksmith stepped back, his brows furrowed.
"You're chasing a ghost, you know."
Ira gave a faint smile.
"I'm chasing a friend."
The path out of Jorvik was hard-packed and familiar, but as the morning wore on, the trees closed in and the land began to shift. The forest north of the village was older than time itself, the trees towering like ancient sentinels. Frost clung to their branches, and the faint hum of the ley lines beneath the ground grew stronger the farther she went. Ira felt the energy prickling at her skin, distant but alive. Vestinus had taught her to listen to it, though she had never mastered the skill as he had. Still, she closed her eyes for a moment and let the faint pull guide her steps. The hours stretched on, and the day grew colder. The sky, once clear, turned pale with gathering clouds. Ira kept her pace steady, her breath visible in the air as she followed the faint markings in Skjorn's journal. Occasionally, she paused to compare the worn maps to her surroundings. Late in the afternoon, she reached a rise overlooking a frozen ravine. Below, a cluster of fir trees swayed gently in the wind. She pulled her cloak tighter and descended carefully, her boots skidding slightly on the icy slope. When she reached the bottom, she caught sight of something strange, a line of stones half buried in the snow forming a path. The stones were weathered and carved with runes that shimmered faintly under the weak light. Ira's heart quickened.
"Issa,"
she murmured. The Seeress's name was a whisper that echoed through the cold air. She exhaled and whispered,
"Hold on. Vestinus. I'm coming."
Chapter 2. The Road North. The cold was sharper in the north, biting with a relentless chill that wrapped around Ira like a second skin. The wind howled through the trees as if the spirits of the wilderness were lamenting her journey. Snow-covered pines lined the narrow path, their branches weighed down by ice. The frozen world was utterly still, save for the crunch of Ira's boots as she pushed forward, her cloak whipping behind her. She had left with purpose, but doubt tugged at her heels. This was more than she had bargained for, a voyage into unknown lands, away from the safety of Jorvik. And for what? A word from the Seeress that may or may not bring her closer to Vestinus. Still, she pressed on. If there was even a chance that the Seeress spoke true, Ira would see it through. The icy path grew steeper, winding toward a frozen ridge. Her breath fogged the air as she paused to scan the landscape below. The forest stretched out endlessly, a sea of white and green fading into the distant grey of the sky. Somewhere behind her, the distant howl of wolves cut through the wind. She frowned.
Wolves this far north?
It wasn't unheard of, but something in the sound unsettled her. She tightened her grip on her bow and continued forward, her steps cautious now. If the wolves were desperate enough to wander this close, she knew better than to assume she'd be left alone. As the path narrowed, the sound of a low growl reached her ears, close, too close. Ira froze, her hand instinctively reaching for an arrow. She turned slowly, her heart quickening as a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the brush. A wolf, massive, its fur bristling with frost, stepped into view. Its breath steamed in the cold air, and its teeth gleamed white as it snarled. It was not alone. 2 more wolves flanked it, their sleek forms circling like shadows on the snow. Ira nocked an arrow, her muscles tensing.
I don't have time for this,
she muttered, aiming at the lead wolf. The creature lunged, and Ira released the arrow with a snap of the bowstring. The arrow struck true, embedding itself in the wolf's shoulder. The beast yelped and staggered, but the others charged without hesitation. Ira leapt aside as one wolf's claws raked through the snow where she had been standing. She drew her sword in a swift motion, the blade gleaming as she spun and slashed. The second wolf snarled as the blade bit into its side, red staining the pristine snow. The lead wolf, injured but enraged, circled again, foam at the edges of its mouth. Ira's breath came in steady bursts, her gaze fixed. The ley lines beneath the earth thrummed faintly in her periphery, a rhythmic pulse that steadied her nerves. She parried the next attack and drove her blade deep into the creature's flank. With a final, pitiful whine, it crumpled into the snow. The remaining wolf hesitated, its golden eyes narrowing before it backed away and disappeared into the shadows. Ira watched it go, breathing heavily as she wiped her blade clean.
They are getting desperate,
she murmured.
The north is colder than I thought.
The sun began to dip behind the hills, casting long, jagged shadows across the snow. Ira pressed on, following the path outlined in Skjorn's journal. The blacksmith's grandfather had mapped this road years ago, detailing hidden landmarks and forgotten resting places. After hours of travel, she came across one of those landmarks, a stone archway buried halfway in the snow. It was carved with runes so old that even the weathering seemed ancient. She brushed away the frost with her gloved hand, revealing faint etchings that glowed faintly with leyline energy. Ira whispered the words aloud, though their meaning eluded her. The runes pulsed faintly, responding to the sound of her voice. The sensation reminded her of Vestinus, his quiet reverence for ancient things, his belief that words carried weight even when their meanings were long forgotten. She stepped beneath the arch, her boots crunching in the untouched snow. On the other side, the path widened into a narrow valley bordered by high ridges. The shadows deepened as night approached, and the bitter cold bit through her cloak. She paused and lit a small torch, the flickering flame casting a dim, warm glow. Her destination was close. She could feel it, the way the air seemed to hum with something more than cold. As Ira rounded a bend, she spotted the remains of a camp nestled against the valley wall. A ring of charred stones marked where a fire had once burned, though the snow had reclaimed most of it. Scattered around the stones were remnants of supplies, an overturned iron pot, a few broken arrows, and a half-buried satchel. Ira approached carefully, her sword drawn. Whoever had camped here had left in a hurry, or not at all. She crouched and sifted through the satchel, finding a waterlogged journal with faded pages. She flipped through it, but most of the entries were smudged or illegible. One fragment stood out, scrawled in shaky handwriting.
Beware the whispering frost. It waits beneath the stone.
Ira frowned, the words settling like ice in her veins. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been wolves or the elements alone. The ley lines here felt fractured, disturbed. A soft sound, a whisper of snow shifting, caught her attention. She turned sharply, her torchlight catching a glint of movement near the ridge above. A figure moved swiftly, their forms silhouetted against the twilight sky. They were tall, wrapped in furs, and carried a spear.
Who's there?
Ira called, raising her sword. The figure paused for a heartbeat before turning and vanishing over the ridge. Ira's grip tightened. Whoever they were, they didn't belong here any more than she did. But one thing was certain, they had been watching her. She adjusted her pack, the journal fragment still clutched in her hand. If the path to the Seeress had already drawn such strange watchers, she could only imagine what awaited her. With one last glance at the ruined camp, she pressed forward into the gathering dark. The Seeress's task loomed ahead, and the North's whispers promised more trials before she reached the shore. But Ira wasn't one to be turned back by shadows, not when she was this close to finding answers. Chapter 3. The Seeress's Cave. The path narrowed as Ira climbed higher into the mountains, the trees thinning until they were little more than gnarled sentinels wrapped in snow. Each step crunched beneath her boots, the silence so complete it felt as if the land were holding its breath. The air had grown thinner, and with it came an eerie stillness that pressed in around her. Even the wind had quieted, as though unwilling to disturb whatever lay ahead. She paused on a ridge, her breath rising in clouds, and studied the terrain. Below her stretched a frozen valley encased in pale blue light, the ice rippling like a cracked mirror. To the north, half hidden among a cluster of jagged rocks, yawned a black opening. The runes in Skjorn's journal had marked this place, the mouth of the Seeress's cave. Ira descended carefully, the ice treacherous beneath her feet. As she drew closer, she felt it again, the faint vibration beneath the soles of her boots, the subtle hum of ley lines threading through the earth. It tugged at her senses like a half-remembered melody. When she reached the cave, the air around it was colder than the wind outside, still and waiting. She stepped into darkness. Her torch flared to life, casting light along the uneven stone walls. Strange charms hung from the ceiling, carved bones and feathers strung with sinew, swaying slightly as she passed. The runes etched into the stone glowed faintly in her torchlight, spirals, eyes and markings older than the oldest Viking tales. The deeper she went, the more it felt as though she were walking not just through a cave, but through memory itself. At the heart of the cavern, a fire crackled softly. Around it sat a figure wrapped in layers of fur and bone-beaded shawls. Her face was lined like river ice, her white eyes clouded and sightless. Yet when Ira entered, the woman turned her head with unerring accuracy.
"Ira Thor's daughter?
The Seeress whispered.
Come and be seen."
Ira hesitated, then stepped into the light.
You know who I am?
"I have watched your path since before you knew it began."
Yrsa said. Her voice was wind and snow, soft and sharp.
"You seek the fallen one, he who vanished from the world of men."
Ira took a breath, forcing calm.
Vest in us. He disappeared months ago. No sign, no trail, only silence.
Yrsa tilted her head.
"Because he walks between worlds."
The words hit Ira like a gust of winter wind.
What does that mean?
The Seeress extended a hand toward the fire. In its flames, shapes began to form, a crimson figure wreathed in flickering shadows, a rift opening beneath a stone altar, a dark sun with a bleeding edge. Ira leaned forward, her throat dry.
"He is caught in a tide greater than you yet understand,"
Yrsa said.
"There are forces at play that seek to unmake the balance. The auroral lens was only the beginning."
What does this have to do with him?
Ira demanded. Yrsa turned her gaze fully to Ira.
Vest in us was not only forged for war, he was shaped by the ley lines, connected to them in ways even the Empire never grasped. That bond has drawn him into a place where shadow and flame intertwine, a place between what is and what should never be.
Ira's fists clenched.
Then tell me how to find him.
I will,
Ursa said.
but you must give something in return.
Ira's brow furrowed.
What?
The Eye of Eldrin.
The Seeress replied, gesturing to a bone-carved map resting beside the fire.
An artifact born of the old gods, hidden across the sea, in a land of stone and shadow. Bring it to me, and I will show you the path to the one you seek.
Ira hesitated.
You want me to leave Vinland? To sail to some forgotten ruin for a relic that might not even exist?
Not might.
Ursa said.
It does, and it is guarded. But only with it can I part the veil between worlds.
Ira stared into the fire, the images of Vest in us already fading. Doubt warred with duty in her chest, but in the end there was no real choice. She looked up.
Tell me where to begin.
Ursa smiled faintly, as though she had known the answer all along.
Go to the docks at Jorvik. Seek out Sigrid Ironwake. She has sailed where few dare to follow. Tell her the Seeress has called you.
Ira stood slowly, her torch casting a bold light across the chamber.
I'll bring you the eye,
She said.
and when I do, you'll show me the truth.
Ursa nodded once.
I will, but beware. Seeress though I am, not all truth can be born without cost.
With those words lingering behind her, Ira turned and left the cave. Snow began to fall as she emerged into the world again. The path ahead was long and perilous, but she had her purpose now. Vestinus was alive, and she would not stop until she found him. Chapter 4. A Ship's Promise. The wind off the fjord carried the sharp scent of salt and brine as Ira and Leona stood on the docks of Jorvik, their eyes fixed on the harbour. Winter's grip had begun to loosen, and the icy waters now flowed freely, clearing a path to the sea. Dockhands moved busily around them, loading crates, coiling ropes, and shouting orders as they prepared vessels for spring voyages. But one ship held Ira's attention. The Skjaldmare was a sleek longship, its prow carved into the shape of a snarling wolf. Its hull was dark with tar and seawater, and its sails, furled for the moment, bore the faded red and black sigil of a sun breaking through storm clouds. The ship had a reputation. Whispers of its resilience in cursed waters and storms that swallowed less fortunate crews. Ira's breath steamed as she waited at the edge of the dock, her pack slung across one shoulder. The Eye of Eldrin lay far across the sea, in lands unknown. But this was the first step. Finding someone who would take her there was no small task. Most captains refused to even speak of crossing the vast Western Ocean, but she had been told one name: Sigrid Ironwake.
She's a brute, that one,
The tavern keeper had said.
Takes no crew she can't trust, and no cargo she can't lift. But she's gone places no one else dares.
Now Ira and Leona stood waiting as footsteps rang out across the planks behind them.
You're the one asking for Sigrid.
A voice said, sharp as a drawn blade. Ira turned. Sigrid Ironwake was a tall, broad-shouldered woman with braided silver-blonde hair and a crooked nose that had clearly been broken more than once. She wore a bearskin cloak over a chainmail vest, and her sea-weathered eyes regarded Ira with cool appraisal.
You're younger than I expected.
Sigrid said.
I've faced worse than the sea.
Ira replied.
I need passage west, beyond the far coast.
Sigrid's brows lifted.
West of Vinland into the uncharted blue.
Ira nodded.
There's something I need to find. An artifact. It's urgent.
And dangerous.
Sigrid added.
You know the waters out there are cursed, islands that shift with the tides. monsters that wear the faces of your kin, fog that sings.
I'm not afraid of songs or shadows.
Sigrid studied her a moment longer. Then she grunted.
Coin?
Ira tossed a heavy pouch onto the planks between them. The weight of silver thudded solidly.
And purpose.
She said.
Not just gold, I'm not sending my crew into death without cause.
Ira hesitated, then stepped closer.
There's a man. Vest in us. He vanished after saving Jorvik. He's not dead. A Seeress says he's tied to an ancient force. To find him, I need the Eye of Eldrin. It lies across the sea, in a land lost to maps.
Sigrid's lips curled into a faint smile.
You believe in prophecies?
I believe in loyalty.
Ira said. There was a moment of silence. Then Sigrid turned and gestured toward the ship.
We set sail at dawn. My crew doesn't like passengers, and they like mystics even less. But I've seen things in those waters. I'll take you, but if you get us cursed, girl, I'll feed you to the sea myself.
Ira smiled.
Deal.
The Skjaldmare creaked as Ira and Leona stepped aboard the next morning. The sky was slate grey, the wind brisk, and the harbour buzzed with last-minute preparations. Sigrid's crew moved like a single organism, disciplined, efficient, and silent. They glanced at the women with thinly veiled suspicion. They stowed their gear near the prow and checked their weapons: bow, sword, knives. As Ira adjusted the leather wrappings on her gauntlets, a shadow fell across her. A man stood beside her, bald, tattooed, with storm-grey eyes.
You're the one chasing ghosts,
He said.
Name's Ulf, quartermaster.
Era. And they're not ghosts.
They will be.
Ulf said and moved on. The sail caught the wind with a loud snap. The ropes sang, the oars pulled, and Jorvik began to shrink behind them. Ira and Leona stood at the prow, their eyes fixed on the misty horizon. As the coastline faded, so did certainty. Fog rolled in thick and strange, coiling around the ship. Shapes moved beneath the waves, too large for fish, too slow for whales. The water glowed faintly at night, phosphorescent and unnatural. The sky turned violet during dusk, and the stars twisted in unfamiliar patterns. The crew grew tense. A man fell overboard one night and was never seen again. Another claimed the sea whispered his name. They passed an island that appeared on no map, its shores littered with the bones of ships and broken statues of forgotten gods. Still, Era endured. She stood beside Sigrid at the helm, her resolve like iron.
You're not like the others.
Sigrid said one night.
You don't flinch when the sea growls.
I've faced worse.
Ira replied, watching the horizon.
And if I haven't yet, I will.
The journey was only beginning, but somewhere beyond the mist lay the Eye of Eldrin, and with it the first thread of Vest in us's fate.
Chapter 5. The Island of Storms.
The storm came without warning. One moment, the sea stretched endless and grey beneath the ship's prow. The next, the sky cracked open with a roar like 1,000 drums. Lightning forked across the heavens, illuminating towering waves that surged from the depths. The crew scrambled to secure sails and rigging, shouting over the howling wind. Rain lashed the deck in sheets. Ira gripped the rail as the deck bucked beneath her, seawater drenching her cloak. Sigrid Ironwake stood at the helm, her braided hair plastered to her face, shouting orders with unyielding calm.
Hard to starboard, keep the bow into the wave.
A wall of water slammed into the ship, tossing it like a toy. Ira was thrown from her feet, crashing into the mast with bone-jarring force. She groaned and dragged herself upright, only to be hit by another blast of wind that tore the breath from her lungs. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of something unnatural in the storm. Faint lights flickered in the sea, like ghostly fire beneath the waves. Shapes moved just below the surface, too large, too fast. The ley lines here were wild, unruly, and pulsing with unstable energy. The ship careened toward a jagged coastline. Ira glimpsed cliffs rising like black teeth against the stormy sky.
Land!
Someone shouted.
Rocks to port!
Sigrid swore and spun the wheel.
Brace for impact.
The ship struck the shallows with a crunching, splintering roar. Ira was thrown into the sea, the freezing water stealing her breath. She struggled, kicking against the pull of the current. Debris drifted around her, barrels, planks, bodies. She surfaced, coughing and gasping, and caught sight of the shoreline through the spray. Gritting her teeth, she swam. She awoke on a bed of wet sand. The sky was still grey, though the storm had passed. Waves lapped at the shore with deceptive gentleness. Ira groaned and sat up, every muscle aching. Her cloak was gone, her sword too, but she still had her boots and her belt. Her fingers were stiff with cold. She looked around. The island was cloaked in mist, the trees beyond the beach standing silent and watchful. She saw no sign of the ship or the crew, only silence and the rhythmic beat of waves against stone. A sound broke the stillness, stone grinding against stone. Ira turned, reaching instinctively for a weapon she no longer had. Something massive was moving in the mist just beyond the tree line. She crouched low, eyes narrowed. The shape stepped forward. It was not human. Towering nearly 10 feet tall, the construct was made of dark stone and bone, its limbs jointed with moss-covered iron. Runes glowed faintly along its arms, pulsing with a slow heartbeat of ley-line energy. Its face was a carved mask of animalistic ferocity. Ira ran. The construct moved with surprising speed, smashing through the underbrush. Ira sprinted toward the thicker forest weaving between trees. She ducked under branches and leapt over roots, heart pounding. The sound of pursuit never faltered. Then she saw it, a cleft in the stone wall ahead, barely wide enough to squeeze through. She dove into it, scraping her arms and legs on the rough rock. The construct halted just beyond the gap, too large to follow. It reached for her, but Ira had already scrambled deeper into the crevice. The stone walls gave way to a cavern. It pulsed faintly with ley energy, the air warmer here, dry. Old carvings lined the walls, spirals and stars, a language of the ancients. She collapsed onto the floor, heart still racing. Then she saw it. Embedded in the wall of the cavern, half buried in stone, was a piece of something ancient, a large, rune-engraved key, its edges worn smooth by time. It glowed faintly with the same energy that had animated the construct. Ira reached for it, her fingers brushing its surface. The runes flared briefly at her touch, then dimmed. Whatever it was important. And she was certain now, this island held more than storm and ruin. Somewhere beneath its surface lay the path to the Eye of Eldrin. She stood slowly, gripping the key, and whispered into the silence,
I will find them, and I will find him.
Chapter 6. The Labyrinth of Eldrin. The ruins of the citadel loomed like the broken crown of a forgotten king, jagged stone walls reaching skyward from the jungle-cloaked cliffs. Moss and creeping vines coiled through shattered archways and tumbled pillars, nature reclaiming what time and war had left behind. Thunder rumbled distantly overhead, and the sky above the island broiled with dark clouds, as if echoing the tension that churned in Ira's chest. She crouched beside the waterfall, feeling the raw ley-line energy vibrating beneath her boots. The water tumbled over ancient runes carved into the cliff face, glowing faintly with residual power. It was Sigrid who found the entrance, a narrow gap hidden behind the veil of falling water.
There!
The captain said, gesturing with her axe.
Doesn't look like much, but that's the mark your Seeress described.
Ira nodded, brushing wet strands of hair from her face.
This is it. The labyrinth lies below.
The surviving crew had regrouped after days of navigating the island's treacherous interior. Their numbers had dwindled, but their resolve held firm. Sigrid led them with gruff efficiency, her fierce loyalty to Ira outweighing her initial doubts about the quest. They lit torches and descended through the narrow passage, the roar of the waterfall fading behind them. The air grew colder, denser, as the tunnel gave way to a spiral staircase carved into obsidian rock. The walls shimmered faintly, as if coated in dust that responded to their presence. At the base of the stairs, the labyrinth revealed itself. A massive chamber opened before them, its floor a vast mosaic of mirrored tiles, half buried in dust and rubble. Stone walls rose in shifting, unnatural angles, and doorways blinked in and out of view like illusions. Pillars hummed with power, etched with glyphs that twisted under torchlight.
Gods,
Muttered one of the crew.
it's alive.
It's ancient,
Ira corrected.
built by those who knew the ley lines. This place bends space and time. We can't trust what we see.
Leona knelt beside a tile that shimmered with heat.
We follow the pulse.
She said.
The eye of Eldrin will draw energy. Feel for it.
They moved slowly, cautiously, down the first corridor. At each intersection, Ira paused, closing her eyes and attuning herself to the ley lines. Faint whispers echoed through her mind, not words, but impressions, forward, downward, truth. The labyrinth tested them. Illusions masked drop-offs as solid ground. Rooms looped back upon themselves in impossible ways. At one point, the crew found themselves face to face with their own reflections, walking in reverse through mirrored hallways. One man panicked and sprinted ahead. They never found him again.
Keep your minds grounded.
Ira warned.
The labyrinth plays tricks.
Hours passed, maybe more. Time had little meaning in the shifting corridors. They battled constructs of stone and bone, animated guardians who rose from the walls without warning. Sigrid's axe sang through the dark. Leona's knives found the gaps in their armor, and Ira fought with ruthless precision. At last they came to a great domed chamber. Its ceiling arched like a cathedral, and in its center stood a dais of golden stone, where a crystalline orb floated in mid-air, the Eye of Eldrin. It pulsed with soft white light, casting long shadows. Ira stepped forward, her hand outstretched.
Wait.
Leona hissed.
It's never that easy.
Too late. As Ira's fingers brushed the eye, the chamber trembled. The floor split, and the walls peeled back with a sound like grinding mountains. From the far side of the chamber, a serpent-like guardian emerged, massive and coiled in ivory plates of stone and bone. Its eyes burned with the same light as the eye itself.
Everyone back!
Sigrid shouted. The creature roared, a deep sound that shook the chamber. Its tail lashed out, striking the ground with seismic force. The crew scattered, weapons raised. Ira gripped the eye, its energy searing against her palm.
We have what we came for. Now, we fight to survive.
And the labyrinth of Eldrin roared to life around them. Chapter 7. The Guardian's Wrath. The Eye of Eldrin pulsed with an eerie light, casting spectral colours across the chamber walls. Ira held it tightly in one hand, the weight of its power pressing into her bones. Behind her, the remnants of the labyrinth echoed with the sounds of crumbling stone and distant groans as the Guardian stirred.
We need to move!
Sigrid Ironwake bellowed, already helping two of the crew scramble down a flight of stairs carved into the rock.
That thing's waking up and I don't plan on being here when it decides to stretch.
Ira turned, just in time to see the Guardian rise. It emerged from the far end of the chamber like a nightmare from legend, a serpent of stone and bone, impossibly large, its eyes glowing with ley-line fire. Runes etched into its surface flared as it moved, shedding dust and ancient magic with every grinding shift. Leaping into motion, Ira and the others fled, ducking beneath archways as the ground shook violently behind them. The Guardian slithered forward, demolishing everything in its path with terrifying efficiency.
This place is collapsing.
One of the sailors cried.
Then we lead it into the collapse.
Ira snapped, heart pounding.
We can't defeat it head on, but maybe we can bury it.
They raced through the labyrinth's winding corridors, the path illuminated by flickering torches and the ambient glow of the eye. Ira clutched the orb tighter, its light growing hotter with each passing moment. The further they ran, the more the labyrinth seemed to fight them. Walls shifted, stairwells vanished, and illusions tried to twist their perception. Vest in us would have known how to read these signs. The thought came unbidden, sharp with grief. As they reached a massive chamber supported by a ring of stone columns, Ira slowed. Her eyes scanned the architecture. Cracks veined the walls and floor. The ceiling trembled.
Here,
She said.
we bring it down here.
Sigrid's brow furrowed.
How?
Runes.
Ira replied, already moving toward a stone plinth at the chamber's centre.
Ancient ones. If we trigger them, they should collapse the roof.
Leona stepped forward, wiping sweat from her brow.
You better be right.
The Guardian crashed into the room and the air filled with the shriek of stone on stone. Its body coiled and hissed, eyes burning as it spotted the humans. Ira shouted to draw its attention, leaping onto the plinth and holding the eye aloft.
Come and claim it.
The creature lunged. Ira slammed her palm against the plinth's surface, activating the runes inscribed there. Light exploded beneath her hand and the walls groaned. A jagged bolt of energy leapt from the orb and shot into the ceiling above. With a thunderous roar, the chamber began to fall apart.
Go.
Sigrid roared. They ran. Columns crashed down, dust choked the air, and the Guardian's anguished roar echoed through the crumbling chamber. Ira darted through falling rubble, the eye of Veldrith still clutched in her hand. She didn't look back. They emerged into a narrow tunnel, just as the entire chamber collapsed behind them, sealing the Guardian beneath a mountain of stone. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Sigrid let out a low whistle.
That was madness. Beautiful, brilliant madness.
Ira managed a tired smile.
Let's hope it stays buried.
They limped through the final stretch of the labyrinth, bruised but alive. Outside, the mist still hung low over the island, but the oppressive energy that had haunted them was gone. The eye of Veldrith pulsed gently in Ira's grasp. Their trial beneath the ruins was over. But the true journey was only beginning. Chapter 8. The Seeress's Price. The northern winds howled through the frost-bitten canyons as Ira trudged up the icy slope once more, her fingers raw despite the thick fur gloves. Behind her, the eye of Veldrith pulsed faintly within its wrappings, the ancient artifact heavier than its size should allow. It had taken everything, her strength, the lives of good crew, and her own faith, to retrieve it. And now, with the labyrinth behind her and the Guardian defeated, she returned to the cave of Yrsa, the Seeress who had set this impossible task in motion. Snow crunched beneath her boots. The breath in her lungs came sharp and fast, but she didn't slow. She knew the way now. The northern lights shimmered overhead like a river of spirits watching from above. Around her, the ley lines thrummed with energy, disturbed but not broken, like harp strings still vibrating after a violent chord. At last the cave came into view. Bone charms swayed in the wind above its entrance, whispering to one another in their silent language. The runes carved into the stone pulsed with light as Ira approached, recognizing her presence. Inside, the cave was unchanged. Yrsa sat in her circle of stones, her milky eyes lifted as if she had been expecting her visitor all along.
You have returned,
The Seeress rasped, voice like the wind through dead branches. Ira pulled the eye of Veldrith from her satchel and unwrapped it slowly. The crystal orb flickered with internal light, shadows and stars swirling beneath its surface. She stepped forward and placed it reverently in Yrsa's outstretched hands.
I held up my end of the bargain.
Ira said, her voice tight with weariness.
Now tell me what you know of Vest in us.
Yrsa's fingers curled around the orb, her eyes fluttered shut as if the weight of the object drew her inward. The runes around the chamber pulsed in time with the eye, casting strange reflections against the cave walls. For a long moment, Yrsa said nothing. Then she opened her eyes and whispered,
The fallen one walks the path of shadow and flame. His fate is written in the stars, but his heart may yet break the chains of destiny. Seek the threshold of worlds, where the living meet the void. There you will find him.
Ira stared at her, trying to understand.
What does that mean? Is he alive? Held captive?
Yrsa tilted her head.
Vestina still draws breath, but he is not whole. The ley lines bind him to something older than you know. He is a thread caught between worlds, woven into the fate of all things.
The threshold of worlds.
Ira repeated.
That's a myth. A tale told to children.
Myths are the scars of truth.
Yrsa replied.
The place exists, a realm between life and what lies beyond. If you wish to reach it, you must go where few have dared. The ley lines will show the way, but you must listen. Trust your blood.
Ira stepped back, overwhelmed. This was no longer just about a friend lost in battle. It was about fate and balance and powers far older than she had ever imagined. Vestinus was tied to something immense, and so now was she. Yrsa rose slowly, the eye still cradled in her hands.
You have taken your first steps across a vast and broken bridge, Seeress. Do not falter.
Seeress.
Ira blinked. The old woman smiled faintly.
You carry the sight, though you do not yet know how to use it. It is your curse and your gift. The ley lines chose you for this.
Ira backed toward the cave's entrance, her heart racing. She had her answer, or part of it at least, but she also had a new burden, a destiny not yet understood. Outside, the wind had died. The sky blazed with stars. She stood for a moment, staring into the heavens, thinking of the threshold of worlds, of flames and shadows, of chains waiting to be broken, and of Vestinus.
Hold on,
she whispered.
I'm coming.
Chapter 9. The Burden of Knowledge. The wind howled across the cliffs as Ira descended from the Seeress's cave, the eye of Eldrin wrapped tightly in a leather satchel against her chest. The crystal's faint pulse still throbbed through the fabric, echoing the rhythm of her own heart. Yrsa's words haunted her with every step. The threshold of worlds, where the living meet the void. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she camped beneath a canopy of ancient pines, the stars winking through gaps in the boughs above. The fire crackled beside her, throwing warmth that never quite reached the icy place inside her where fear had settled. She turned the eye over in her hands, watching the way its facets caught the firelight and cast flickers of color across the snow. It felt heavier than it should, not in weight, but in purpose. A bridge to a truth she wasn't certain she was ready to face. Vestinus lived, or something like him did. The next day, Ira made her way south, retracing her steps toward Jorvik. The forest felt different now, still wild, still cold, but filled with a pressure she couldn't name. It was as though the eye of Eldrin had stirred something ancient beneath the soil, something that watched her from behind trees and within shadows. By the time the wooden palisades of Jorvik rose from the horizon, Ira was exhausted in body and soul. She passed through the gates to find a city both familiar and foreign. People bustled through the streets, hauling winter stores and calling to one another in the early thaw. Children chased each other past the smithy, and the scent of roasting meat wafted through the air. Life moved on. It always did. Yet none of it touched her. Sigrid Ironwake found her before she even reached the longhouse. The sea captain leaned against a post near the docks, sharpening a blade with slow, deliberate strokes.
You look like hell spat you out.
Sigrid said without looking up. Ira allowed herself a tired smirk.
You should see the other guy.
The voyage didn't kill you then, that's promising.
Ira unclipped the satchel and handed it over. Sigrid opened it, brow lifting slightly at the sight of the eye.
And here I thought you were chasing a myth.
I still might be.
Sigrid handed the satchel back.
Want my help chasing it further?
Ira hesitated. The warmth in Sigrid's offer was genuine, but so was the risk. Yrsa's prophecy still echoed in her ears, every word heavy with dread. Not a rescue, a reckoning.
Maybe.
She said finally.
I don't know what comes next. Not really.
Then it sounds like you'll need a good ship and someone stubborn enough to keep you alive.
Ira clasped Sigrid's arm in a firm grip.
When I know where we're going, I'll find you.
She spent the evening atop the city walls, staring across the darkened waters of Lake Vetersjord. The moonlight shimmered on the surface, and below her boots she felt the faint tremor of the ley lines. The eye of Eldrin sat in her lap, silent for the first time since she retrieved it. But the prophecy wouldn't leave her. The threshold of worlds. She had heard that phrase before, once in a song the Skraelings sang to their dead. A place where the veil between life and death thinned. A myth, a warning, a gate. Ira closed her eyes, her hand resting on the eye.
I'm coming. Vest in us.
She whispered.
Whatever you've become, I'll find you.
Behind her, the wind shifted. The first storm of spring stirred the trees, but the path ahead had never felt more uncertain. Still, she would follow it, into the void if she must. Epilogue. The Call of Destiny. Jorvik slumbered under a silver sky, the moon casting long, pale reflections across the still surface of Lake Vetersjord. The spring thaw had begun, and the forests whispered with the soft drip of melting snow. Ira stood alone on the shore, her cloak drawn tight against the chill, the eye of Eldrin wrapped in linen and resting in the satchel at her side. She watched the lake in silence. So much had changed. The Seeress's words still echoed in her mind.
The fallen one walks the path of shadow and flame. His fate is written in the stars, but his heart may yet break the chains of destiny.
Vest in us was alive, somewhere, but not the same. She didn't know if he still remembered who he had been, or if the power that had claimed him had twisted him beyond recognition. All she knew was that he was out there, and that her journey wasn't over. A soft rustling behind her signaled another presence. She didn't turn.
I thought I might find you here,
said Sigrid Ironwake, stepping up beside her. The captain's breath plumed in the air as she folded her arms and looked out over the lake.
Didn't think you were one for moonlit walks?
Ira said. Sigrid chuckled.
I'm not, but I've got a ship and a restless crew. Figured you'd need both before long.
Ira glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips.
You're not wrong.
They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the creak of ice against the rocks and the quiet lapping of water.
Do you believe it?
Ira asked quietly.
That he can come back? That fate can be broken?
Sigrid was quiet for a long time. Then,
I've seen storms calm and dead men walk. If the gods want a story to end a certain way, they should write it better.
Ira let out a soft laugh. It didn't last long, but it was real. She knelt beside the lake and pressed her palm to the earth. A faint hum rose to meet her, the pulse of the ley lines, slow and deep, like a heartbeat in slumber. For a moment, she thought she felt him, Vest in us, distant and veiled. But there. She opened her eyes and stood.
Tell the crew to get ready,
she said.
We sail at dawn.
Sigrid nodded once.
Where to?
Ira turned her gaze to the horizon, where the first stars began to glimmer above the treetops.
To the threshold of worlds,
she said.
And beyond? Thank you for listening to the Tales of Veldrith. Books 3 through 5 are now available on Kindle and in paperback. Visit mattytaylor.com for more details.